Moving on to wide receivers now. John Brown, I got to bring up 41% owned. A lot of people cutting him if they didn't have IR slots, given that 3-week absence. Well, he's now back to practice. He had back-to-back 11-point fantasy days, saw 11 targets and hauled in 8 of them for 99 yards 2 weeks ago. And then right after that, followed up with not quite as crazy of a performance, but still a pretty usable 8 targets, 6 catches, and over 70 yards. So the guy can get it done. And again, he's facing a Denver team that's middle of the road, nothing too crazy. They gave up a couple big days to those Panthers guys, and they can shoot it out too, which is the best part, is if they get engaged in a shootout here with the Bills. We've seen Drew Lock kind of shoot it out too. That could keep John Brown very viable. So a guy that was dropped in a lot of leagues could be a viable punt if you're dealing with wide receiver problems. There are a ton of guys, though, out there at wide receiver, much deeper than running back. Lynn Bowden being my probably second favorite option as a mass available guy, as we talked about. Gesicki out. You got Devontae Parker down. You got Jakeem Grant week to week. Lynn Bowden is the man here. He's the one that stepped up. He caught 7 catches on 9 targets, 82 yards. All those led the Dolphins on the receiving categories here. Man the slot. They kind of dialed up some trickery to maybe throw. They motioned him in the backfield a bunch. And with these backfield injuries, don't be surprised to see him take backfield snaps. That was his calling card coming out of Kentucky there. He was a move it all over the place, like jack of all trades, played quarterback. We could see some trickery against the Patriots. Brian Flores is going to dial some of that shit up against his old former coach. I could see Bowden throwing a touchdown, catching a touchdown, like having one of those crazy days. He's only 3,600 on DraftKings too. If all these injuries linger in, you can expect another 9 to 10 targets for Lynn Bowden Jr. So after John Brown, and maybe even before John Brown, depending how these injuries play out, I like Lynn Bowden. Another guy who did just lead his team in targets, didn't do too much with it, but Chad Hansen, Scott Hansen's cousin. No, I actually have no clue who the fuck Chad Hansen is until this last week, but saw 7 targets, hauled all 7 of them in for 56 yards. Pathetically, that led the team, but that was with Cooks out. No clue yet if Cooks is going to play or not with that neck and foot injuries. But if he sits, Chad Hansen's somewhat viable. I mean, if you get that against the Bears, yeah, he gets the Colts in, and that's not a great matchup. We just saw Nelson Aguilar go 100 in a TD on him. They're nothing like too crazy. They drop in that too deep zone quite often. I could see Chad Hansen, finding those soft spots. He seems to be that like crafty little guy that Watson has trust in. Sure, Cutie scored the touchdown, but ultimately it was Chad Hansen that was his engine for Deshaun Watson. And in a mediocre matchup, don't be surprised if Hansen has another decent day here with Deshaun Watson. I would also not be opposed to Russell Gage if Julio misses time. We saw him heave a touchdown. He caught 82 yards on 5 receptions, and this is now a couple games in a row we've seen Russell Gage, very quiet for a little while now, and then back-to-back in half PPR scoring. He scored 13 points and 16 points across these last 2 weeks. And there's talk that Julio might get shut down with the season already over for the Falcons. It's been over since the second the whistle blew on the year. But ultimately, I don't know that Julio will play, and Tampa Bay has slowly become a matchup to target. It was one that was pretty scary to start the year. They've now become bottom 5 against wide receivers. So if Julio misses next week against week 15, you have that Tampa Bay matchup. I think Russell Gage could be a very viable streamer in week 15. And last receiver to toss out was big play Hamler. 86 yards and 2 TDs. I mean, just running wide open. This guy is a terror to cover. We were hyped up on this guy. He's been in and out of the lineups with injuries, but he's showing why, when he's healthy, what he can do. And he's going to draw the weakest of the Buffalo coverage. Yeah, they got Tre'Davious White, Josh Norman, a decent safety and Hyde, but like they're gonna have their hands full when you got Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick dominating the first 2 people. I think Hamler could definitely sneak deep. Only 3,500 on DraftKings as well. I think he could definitely go deep on this team and toss in another score there. So he's worth a potential punt if you're desperate, as is Tyron Johnson, should Mike Williams sit, as we talked about, was second behind only Keenan Allen in yards, found the end zone, 6 catches on 7 targets, over 50 yards. Solid day, solid overall day, and it was clear he has a nice rapport with Justin Herbert. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.